Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Well, during the Sunday night broadcast of the Yankee-Philly series, Bob Costas, our old friend, poked in with a little promotion of Don Mattingly, mentioning that he should be in the Hall of Fame, according to his opinion there. So I figured maybe we'll have a little bonus episode there, kind of discuss this. We've kind of hashed this over. You know, if you follow the Section 420 Talkin Yankees, again, as much as I like Don Mattingly, love Don Mattingly, again, I'm a kid of the 80s. I just do not see him as a Hall of Famer, but of course the debate always crops up. You know, I could have just redirected you to a YouTube episode uploaded back on November 5th of 2025. Kind of got into it. That's when they were kind of doing the Veterans Committee. So that those are players who gone past like the, I guess the 10-year limit there, where they can still get voted in by a Veterans Committee, which is kind of a mix of former players and executives, umpires, and they kind of vote in players who are kind of on the margins a little bit, or maybe were sort of overlooked, or as generations go by, you evaluate the game and stats a little differently, and voting in people like Harold Baines, for example, or Jeff Kent, someone like Dave Parker, you know, players that are kind of on the margins there, and giving them the nod to push in, and Don Mattingly, of course, the greatness of him from the 80s there, but unfortunately with him, his career cut short, and not that it was cut short, it's just, obviously, you know, you had 6 unbelievable seasons, and then kind of a big drop off on like the final 5 or 6 seasons there, where you figure, you know, as much as the greatness was during the best years of his career, there's not enough longevity where you would say he was a great Hall of Fame player, so the debate's always on. This seems to be percolating a little bit more on social media there, so again, even though I've kind of hatched it in the past, I'll figure I'll give, again, my 2 cents of what I get. I just do not believe Don Mattingly belongs in the Hall of Fame. Now, will he get it at some point? Maybe. Am I saying he's not a great player? Of course, he was a great player there, but there's things that I kind of look at the Hall of Fame, longevity being with them, and again, that's just kind of the feelings why I don't think Don Mattingly belongs there, but nevertheless, we'll have the debate. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get cool little episodes like this. So wherever you get your favorite podcast, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, and subscribe, and make sure, as I mentioned before, there is also the YouTube version of the show. Go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, and subscribe there as well. So yeah, again, we always know the conundrum with Don Mattingly. Bob Costas kind of mentions through the broadcast from 1984 to 1989, and he put together like 6 unbelievable seasons where you could say at his best, he was probably better than a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame now. Some of these newcomers, such as like an Andre Dawson, for example, or Dave Parker, for example. Again, when Mattingly at his best, he was better than all of them. And that's definitely a case to be made. But again, I always just go back to sort of the numbers, the milestone, and the longevity. And again, trying to keep the emotion out of it is why I just do not feel he's a Hall of Fame. And now, you know, lifetime batting average of 307. So even when he had the injuries after the 1990 season, never really, you know, fell flat. I think he had like 91. He might have hit 256, but it was a kind of a shortened season. But if you look at his other years, even like in the mid-90s there, as you know, he was approaching his final year, 95, so it was like a 280, 290, 300. I mean, he never really lost the batting average. He always kept that respectable, and he never got gross. Even after his best power days were over, you know, a couple of seasons he hit 14 home runs. Another season he hit 17 home runs. He never lost his defensive prowess. So career-wise, 9 Gold Gloves. But if you look at the drop-off in terms of his offensive production, there, it's noticeable there. I mean, it's a big drop-off. But again, just finishing, rounding out his numbers there, 222 career home runs, not even reaching 250, which is, you know, half of the magical 500 home runs, which usually, at least back during his era, if you would have reached that, you almost shoo-in for the Hall of Fame there. So 222 career home runs, 2,153 hits, so about 800 hits and change shy of the magical 3,000, where yes, if he reached that, then again, back in the day, if you reached that, you almost a guaranteed shoo-in to be a Hall of Famer. But again, Mattingly, 800 leads short there, about 270 leads short of 500 there, and that's just to get baseball. It's numbers, it's milestones, and if you're not near any close to that, I don't say that's everything. You know, we see a few guys making the Hall of Fame now, like Carlos Beltran, who, you know, hitting the 400s of the home runs, that didn't get the 500 there, but again, had a long career and put up many great seasons, multiple great seasons for a long period of time, where you can at least understand why he was voted into the Hall of Fame. Again, straight up, Mattingly at his best, is he better than probably Adrian Beltre, who's in the Hall of Fame? Yeah. And Mattingly at his best, as a straight up, again, his best years was better than probably someone like a Jeff Kent even. Probably you say yeah, but the thing about both Adrian Beltre and Jeff Kent, they played a long time. So just to vote him in just for like 6 tremendous seasons, and then, you know, where your other 6 seasons of your career kind of like pedestrian at best, I think when there's a drop off there, you can't put all those people in the same class, unfortunately. And it's sad that that's what happened to his career. He got the bad back and everything, but it did happen. You can't point to it, and you can't say, you know, This was going to be one of the greatest players ever there, but, so-and-so hurt his knee and it was never the same. And he had a couple of unbelievable seasons there. Let's put him in the Hall of Fame. He's a great player. You can't do that. Just, because you're really making decisions on emotions. You're not making decisions on the numbers. And I just think everything's baseball's numbers, and numbers crunching, stats and all that stuff. And I'm not saying he wasn't a great player, but you also, part of being a quote-unquote great player is your longevity. And, Don Mattingly at his best was way better than Derek Jeter, but Derek Jeter was around for a very long time. And, right time, right place there. If Jeter somehow got drafted by the Royals and something, probably a totally different story. Maybe he would have only played 5 or 6 seasons and it would have been an afterthought, but he played a long time. Now, did he hang on for a year or two, a little bit more than he should have? Yeah. I'm going to say that. But overall, the full body of work with all the championships and being the captain of the Yankees and the 3,000 hits and all that, it's kind of a no-brainer. Of course, there was the one writer, of course, we don't know who it is, said he should not be a first-round unanimous Hall of Fame, but nevertheless, Rivera. Yeah, not only was he great, but he was great for a long period of time. The guy pitched almost like 20 years doing this stuff. So, you have to take that into account because it's not fair to those players who had the greatness for multiple decades versus a player who just was great for 5 or 6 seasons, As is to fill out the rest of Mattingly's stats. Did get the MVP in 1985, beat out his teammate Dave Winfield. I mentioned the 9 Gold Gloves. Got a batting title. That was in 84, 6-time All-Star and 3-time Silver Slugger. But again, this is not long enough. And officially on paper, played 14 seasons. But if you really want to break that down, came up for a cup of coffee in 1982, only played 7 games. Okay, you can say that's a season, but he only played 7 games. And then, of course, after that in 83, played a little bit more, and that's when he took the starting first baseman job. Played a little bit more at 91 games. But then if you want to take away that 1982 season, you look at it now, he only played 13 seasons. And it's just, as a position player, I just can't say that's a Hall of Fame quality, even though he was great and he was probably the best player in the game for a 5 or 6 year stretch. And again, I just think the longevity counts there, and then, the way the cookie crumbles there, and I just don't think that qualifies for the Hall of Fame. Now, looking at things differently and time passes by and Mattingly's face is always around, he obviously now managing the Phillies, and of course he did win a Manager of the Year award with the Marlins a couple of years ago. So, if his face is always around in baseball, maybe at some point just from him being around a lot and people kind of looking at things differently, as time goes on, again, people view different stats differently and maybe look at things differently than they would. You got a new age of writers as kind of the old writers kind of retire and die off. But again, he's not going to get into that way, but he would have to get into the Veterans Committee. Maybe they throw him a bone, maybe they get him. If they did, fine, that's okay. But I just don't like the idea of opening the door, because then you have a lot of guys that are going to be on the margins like that for different reasons. And yeah, even though Mattingly might be the best of those guys on the margins, I just don't think you should have guys on the margins. Either someone's a Hall of Famer because of the numbers they put up or the greatness over a long period of time, or you don't have a Hall of Fame and it's just sort of a clown show to sell jerseys and have a bobblehead day and this and this and that. And if that's what it becomes, maybe that's what it becomes there. But I'd rather keep the sanctity of the Hall of Fame in terms of this, the greats of the greats there. The no doubt about it's there. And unfortunately, Don Mattingly there is victimized by the back injury. Can't say he's not a great player, but I just do not think he's a quote-unquote Hall of Fame player. And if you want to make some comparisons, look at another player during his same generation, and that's former Yankee and former Red Sox Wade Boggs. Played 18 seasons, had 3,010 hits. You could say maybe he hung on those little last 2 years with Tampa. Obviously, his 97 season wasn't good with the Yankees, and then he kind of lost the starting job to Charlie Hayes there, and the Yankees had a bit of a platoon situation. But Boggs, pretty decent, though, those last 2 seasons he had at Tampa. Did he hang on a little bit to get to 3,000? Maybe, but still, he was right there knocking on the door. And then Mattingly, as mentioned before, only had 2,150 dig, and Wade Boggs was kind of knocking on there, where he just needed that one or more 2 seasons to hit the 3,000 there. So I'm not going to blame the guy for that. And or say something. I mean, Jeter more or less kind of did the same thing a little bit. If you want to say that he hung on a little bit, even though he had his 3,000 hits secured well before about to retire. But nevertheless, got the batting title 5 times. Now, Mattingly only got the batting title once. Wade Boggs got it 5 times there. But straight up, would you say when Mattingly was as best, was he a better player than Wade Boggs? Maybe them, and Wade Boggs was always the better average hitter. But Mattingly, of course, having more power with the doubles and home runs. Again, Wade Boggs was never really a power hitter, and that's part of the reason why they kind of wore it as welcome at Boston. They wanted him to be a more pull home run hitter. Of course, Wade Boggs rather have the batting average in, rather hit some opposite field singles or doubles off the green monster versus trying to pull it to right field. And again, his best season, he had 24 home runs in 1987, 12-time All-Star to compare. Mattingly was on all-time 6 times, and 8-time Silver Slugger versus Mattingly was only a Silver Slugger 3 times. So Wade Boggs, who again doesn't really blow you off the charts because we know he's always going to have a high batting average, but kind of just nonchalantly has way better numbers, almost double the numbers and accolades of Don Mattingly in many cases. And Wade Boggs, again, you have to reward him. He played 18 seasons, played a long time. You have to reward that. And you can't give a guy that maybe was better than Wade Boggs for a couple of seasons there, but didn't play nearly as long and wasn't a great player nearly as long as Wade Boggs was. It's not fair to Wade Boggs there. So I think that's just the way it is. You have to look at the numbers and the longevity, and Mattingly doesn't have it. Some of the stats Casas put on the board that he was the Yankee captain for a minute. Okay, yeah, that means something for the Yankees. Doesn't mean anything else really at that there. But again, the argument Casas made is that, yes, Mattingly at his best was probably better than a lot of the guys that have been going to the Hall of Fame lately, but the difference is those guys have been going to the Hall of Fame lately. They played much longer than Don Mattingly and had a certain greatness longer. Now, were their best years as best as Don Mattingly? No, but they had more really good, impactful seasons than Don Mattingly did over a longer period of time. So you have to reward that, and that's just unfortunately the way it is. So that's my argument. It's probably about the third or fourth time I've done this. It may seem like I'm a hater and I don't like Don Mattingly and all that stuff. But just, as Yankee fans, and again, it is an interesting debate. It comes up once in a while. So if you can hear my take on the past, there it is. One last thing has always been, the other argument I've heard is, I want to cover that. I did cover this one in the YouTube episode, as again, I did back in November, is the Sandy Koufax argument. Same thing happened to Sandy Koufax. His first 5-6 seasons, the numbers weren't great. It's a bit of a schlep pitcher, and there's whatever reason, if just again, go to Baseball References, look at the numbers there, like 1961 or 2, it just clicked in, and then he had like 6 unbelievable seasons, which is almost the same case as Don Mattingly. I mean, they kind of pitched the same amount of seasons, so you say, hey, why would you be okay with Sandy Koufax but not be okay with Don Mattingly? Well, that we got to break down. First of all, a pitcher has much more impact on the game he participated in than the position player. So yeah, give or take, you'd rather have a really good position player because he's going to play almost every game there versus a starting pitcher only pitches one every 4 or 5 games there. But Sandy Koufax, again, as a pitcher, though, it's not that he was just like kind of good at his position. He was like maybe the best pitcher in the game. Now, Don Mattingly, yes, maybe at a certain point he was the best first baseman in the game, offensively, defensively. Met fans may argue with Keith Hernandez there, at least on the defensive end of it. But Sandy Koufax, I mean, he was baseball. He was an MVP. Yes, Don Mattingly was MVP as well, but a 4-time World Series champion. And if you look at a couple of seasons he had, twice he had an ERA under 2. An under 2 as a starting pitcher. And back then it was differently. I mean, you threw complete games, you pitch into the 7th and 8th inning, not like now where you only throw 5 innings there and then have like 20 guys coming out of the bullpen. Plus you had the 4-man rotation versus the 5-man rotation, so you were out there a lot and you had to be good a lot more times. And even the one season where he didn't have an ERA under 2, it was like 2.04, a multiple ERA champion as well there. So yeah, they had about the same amount of like really good out of this world seasons like that. But as a starting pitcher, you have to value that differently than a position player. You could say Don Mattingly was famous maybe because he was a New York Yankee, but you would say who was the face of baseball in the 80s? You could throw a lot of people around. Early 60s, Dodgers, Sandy Koufax, he was kind of the guy. Unfortunately, during that period, kind of when, unfortunately, the Yankees were starting to fizzle out a little bit with Mickey Mantle, Berra, and all that. They had kind of the Dodgers was kind of the team of that mid to like little mid-60s run there from 62 on. They're beating the Yankees in the 63 World Series, and Sandy Koufax is being a part of that. And again, a multiple-time World Series MVP as well there. So the argument between Mattingly and Sandy Koufax were, yes, they're both kind of similar situations that, but again, Sandy Koufax, yeah, even though he had the same amount of kind of off-the-chart years, they were way more impactful for the game compared to Don Mattingly there. So, I know people want to use that argument, but again, Sandy Koufax clearly, not just the best pitcher in the game, but unbelievable numbers as a pitcher there, where, again, you wouldn't mind him being in the Hall of Fame there. So I just wanted to quell that little quick argument before we close it out. So that's the episode. Maybe Don Mattingly gets in someday with the veteran committee. I won't be against it. I won't burn his poster or something like that. But the fact that it's gone this far and the writers never put him in all those years, even if we're going to look at it differently, it's just the fact remains he's probably not a Hall of Famer. Catch you next time.